Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Shakuda Dubule and I am a badminton player from Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, so for today's video, it's a bit different. I had this idea in mind for almost a year now actually. Last year I knew that I would be traveling a lot and obviously with more travel comes more expenses. And I kept track of every receipt, bill, what have you, concerning expenses relating to badminton over the course of 2022. And I thought that it would be a cool video at the end of the year to total up all of my expenses to see how well I did in managing my expenses and trying to stretch the resources that I had as much as it took me a bit longer than I thought in terms of trying to get everything to look cohesive. But I finally did it, and maybe a little bit of procrastination as well, but I finally got it done. I had a number in my head as to how much I thought that I spent, and I think that I was pretty spot on. I think I was pretty frugal in terms of my spending because I knew that every cent spent hurt, basically, and every cent saved would could possibly help me go into our next tournament. So that was mainly my mindset going into 2022. I can probably link his video up here, but Felix Mishika, I think, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, he has a really big YouTube channel called Tennis Brothers, and he also did a video similar to this at the end of the year. It was pretty similar in terms of the level of tournaments, tennis to badminton, especially at this level, you don't make a lot of money. Sometimes you don't make any money. I mean, badminton, even at the highest stage, don't make as much as tennis. The top 32 ranked in the world in badminton can actually make a living off of badminton. Everyone else, they probably can if they get a lot of support from their associations, sponsors, and so on. I actually want to acknowledge my sponsors first because without them, last year would not have been possible. They were able to take a bit of the burden in terms of expenses off of my back, a tremendous help. So I'd like to thank my main sponsors for last year, being Colfire and the Ministry of Sport and Community Development. So, but I'll get into the finance part of that later on in the video. So before I give the number of like the actual number of how much I spent last year, I'd like you guys to comment below how much you think that I actually spent. You can do it in TT dollars, US dollars. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. So, to begin, I just want to do a quick breakdown of what the expenses really went into. So I traveled to 8 countries last year, took 31 flights. Out of those 9 countries, there was 5 new countries that I visited, and in total, I took 9 badminton trips. It's a bit of a cohesive video because I know there would be numbers all over, and I didn't want to go into every single figure. So I broke down the cost into 5 different categories: tournaments, hotels, tournament fees, COVID tests, because I think that one shocked me the most as how much I spent, and food. There were 2 reasons I would be traveling for. The first one would be for training, as for 2022, I was not able to train in Trinidad for the number of days a week that I actually needed to in order to compete well on tour. So training. And the second part, the actual competing, so taking part in tournaments. So those are the 2 umbrellas we're looking at today, and then the 5 categories where I'm breaking it down. So let's go. Honestly speaking, I couldn't train as much as I wanted to because tournaments just drained all of the money out of me, literally. So there were two places that I traveled to last year in terms of training, and I really wanted to go back to each of those places. I may have mentioned that I was coming back, but yeah, the financial constraints kept me in Trinidad for a bit longer than I wanted to. The two places that I trained in were Germany, which was very long term, and um, Barbados. So Germany was a different experience, and it's a experience that I'll keep in my heart. It was very special. I spent the first quarter of the year in Germany, so that was definitely a big expense. I think Germany was the most economical out of all the places I've been to this year, which is crazy. Let's go into it. So the cost of airfare for these two training bases came up to $9,470. The cost of training for those two places was $5,439. But I was gonna do an average cost on training, but it would really make the figures look distorted, mainly because Barbados was more expensive than Germany. To put things into perspective, I spent 3 months in Germany and then I spent 2 weeks in Barbados. I wanted to travel on the Pan Am tour, so having Germany as my training base just didn't work out. I mean, it worked out well in every other aspect for those first 3 months. So, like, I was able to do school there, training. So, everything was blended really well. It was really cohesive. And I also like being able to do exams there as well. I had the option to do that. But it's just so far away from everything else. And just going back and forth, let's say a couple weeks at a time, wouldn't have made sense. Maybe if I was competing in Europe, that would have been different. But yeah, I just couldn't logistically make Germany work as a training base. The next thing was accommodation. So in total for accommodation for those two bases, $4,713. Again, Germany was probably more economical, mainly because I was off campus, so I didn't stay at the sports school in Germany, which saved me a ton of money. I think if I was staying at the sports school, it would have came up to the whole 3 months of rent when I was off campus. So I must really thank the team that I had over there for helping me out in terms of finding accommodation outside. So they helped me to find an apartment at a really good cost, something that was in my budget, and it was private. So yeah, I didn't have to share anything with anyone. So it was completely private, which I loved. I must say thanks to especially Christoph, Leonard. I know those two really helped me in the beginning stages of planning my trip for Jena. I mainly talked with them in terms of trying to find a place to stay. And then the whole COVID situation, 2021 planning going into 2022, that was another barrier. Obviously, I never went to Germany, let alone Europe. So obviously, I didn't know the situation of finding an apartment in Vienna. So they really helped out with that situation. Okay, the next thing was food. And in total, I spent $3,310 on food. I mean, in Germany, I probably only ate out a couple of times in the 3 months because it was just a lot easier to go to the grocery, make my own meals, meal prep. So I'm really happy that I kept those costs down. Yeah, so the only time that I would say splurge was maybe going to eat at the sports school, which, yeah, that would have been another course. I didn't do that a lot. Maybe 5, 6 times I did that, and then eaten out a couple of times. And then in Barbados, I didn't eat out. Maybe once I did in the 2 weeks. So yeah, eating out always is an extra cost. So that's the training basis covered for 2022 for Germany and Barbados. Next, we're going to go on to where the bulk of the spending was. So this is where I spoke about earlier about breaking it down into 5 categories for tournaments. So I broke it down once again into airfare, hotels, tournament fees, COVID tests, and food. I traveled to 7 tournaments last year, 7 international tournaments. I also excluded taking part in tournaments in Germany because those were league matches and like under 22 state competitions and so on. So some of those costs were covered by SV GutsMuths Jena. And yeah, so yeah, thanks again, guys. So the countries that I traveled to for tournaments were El Salvador, Guatemala, Peru, Canada, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. Traveling to those 7 tournaments, it's cost me 40,150 TT dollars, which is an average of 6,700 TT dollars per flight, which is about 985 US dollars. When I saw that total for flights and well, I immediately got a headache. Okay. Number 2 was hotels. Hotels was another big cost because a lot of the times those are usually a big cost because especially for COVID, maybe before COVID, a lot of people would have stayed at cheaper hotels, to keep their costs low. But a lot of these official hotels for the tournaments were mandatory because they wanted to keep everyone in the same bubble. So, and a lot of times the official hotels aren't the cheapest in the area and would also save money on transportation because once you're in the official hotel, you get transport to and from the tournament, training practices and airports and so on. So the total that I spent for 2022 in hotels for tournaments was 18,597 TT dollars, which on average, for the duration of the tournament, $2,657 or 390 US. And mind you, for usually the duration of a tournament is a week. So spending on average 2,600 to stay in a country for the week is crazy. Next category is tournament fees. So to take part in international competitions, usually almost every competition you have to pay a tournament fee. The total that I spent in tournament fees for those 7 tournaments is $6,154, which on average is paying 880 TT dollars for one tournament or 129 US. The fourth category I'm gonna do is food. You may get breakfast free at the hotel, but everything else you have to sort out. So lunch, dinner, snacks. This includes getting water, maybe Gatorade, and so on. So my total for 2022 for food at tournaments was $5,292, which on average is spending 756 TT dollars or 111 US for the duration of one tournament, which is unfortunately the sad part, especially going to some of these countries. Like for me, I have a really sensitive stomach, and going to a tournament is not the time for me to try new food. So a lot of the times I have to stick to maybe chain restaurants and so on, where they're pretty consistent in how they prepare food no matter what region or country that you're in. And sometimes it's not the healthiest of foods, but it it gives you that comfort that okay, you're not the chances of getting food poisoning is low. You really don't want to be trying new foods for tournaments, and maybe it won't agree with you leading up or during tournament. That's always an issue going to tournaments. You see people getting food poisoning, and that is something I try my best to stay clear from. So most of these countries they have Uber Eats, so that is what I do. Find a chain that I know, and yeah, that is what I do. And this food is separate from the food that is, yeah, the food cost of Germany and Barbados. That's completely different. So that's about what, $9,000 in food for the year and traveling. TT dollars. Category that I'm gonna do is COVID tests. Prior to the pandemic, this wasn't a cost that I'd have to factor in at all. And the fact that I spent so much money in taking COVID tests was crazy. I also added the COVID test from Germany and Barbados because when I was doing all the calculations, I completely forgot to add in that part. So that's why it's a bit higher. So the total amount that I've spent on getting COVID tests was $4,452, which is crazy. Can't believe and the sad part is now you don't have to spend money on COVID tests, which I mean I'm really happy about, but I'm so sad that I had to spend basically $4,500 on COVID tests. They're having so many restrictions coming in and leaving Trinidad. When you are traveling to all these different countries, each country has like their own set of restrictions. Some countries might be less less relaxed, I would say. And especially for tournaments, they have their own restrictions as well. So, staying at the official hotel to limit contact with other people. And another thing was PCR tests. So at the beginning of the year, that's what made the cost so high in the first place. So PCR tests were about twice the cost of antigen tests. So as the tournaments got later and later down in the year, I would basically email either the technical director, the tournament organizer of whatever tournament that I was going to, and just confirm that I was able to take an antigen test instead of a PCR test. And usually they would say, okay, it's no problem. And once I showed the negative test, that is all that they cared about. So I think I covered all of the 5 categories, including the categories for the training bases and for the tournaments. I know this is a figure that most of you all have been waiting for, right? The grand total of what I spent for training abroad and international tournaments for badminton for the 2022 season was 97,577 TT dollars. And I basically spent $100,000, which is insane for 7 tournaments and training consistently 3.5 months out of the 12 months of the year. That's insane. When I saw that number, I just stared at it for like 5 minutes. I didn't know what to do with myself. At the beginning of the video, huge thanks to Ministry of Sports and Community Development in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Colfire. They were definitely the main ones in helping me cover a lot of these costs. So roughly over 50% was covered by these sponsors. So I really need to say a huge thanks to them, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been going to all of these tournaments and having these experiences and things like collecting valuable world ranking points. So yeah, and thank you guys for watching. Let me know below if it was close to the figure that you got in comments below. So I'm just really grateful for even being able to travel this much. This definitely put things into perspective for me traveling and experiencing a full year of badminton on tour. So thank you guys for following along, and let me know what you think of this video. If you want to see more breakdown type videos like this, let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next video.